thank you again to Reverend Kent and to Dave and to all the Daves for helping me to be here this morning. It's a pleasure to be back. I have been here before, but not for a while. So it's good to be with you all today. Oh, and thank you to our musicians as well. Such a treat. So unlike the people in the story that I shared earlier, I've really never worked a night shift. I've definitely never been a zookeeper, although it's on my list. Never painted a bridge or driven a cab or been a freighter captain. Are there folks here who have worked a night shift before? All right, a couple folks. The exception is that when I was preparing for Unitarian Universalist ministry, I worked in a hospital as a chaplain, and I did take overnight calls because sometimes there are things that happen in the middle of the night at a hospital that can't wait until morning. And I remember how quiet the cafeteria was and how there was a real feeling in the hospital of just a different key, a different hum, different workers on call. And I had a little cot in a little room somewhere in the hospital, and I would try to sleep, and then of course I couldn't sleep because what if my pager went off, or what if my pager didn't go off? But I do remember how important it was to have someone on the night shift because when someone made a call, it was so important to be able to answer it. And that was what we were able to do on the night shift. Now, in the story I shared earlier, the kind of work that the people were doing at night wasn't emergency work, really. It was really not that different from the work that they were doing during the day. They were building and talking, they were creating and guarding and helping. I love that story because it does draw our attention to the way that the world keeps on turning, even when we are asleep. I love the way that it brings all their lives together at that beautiful table at the waitress at the all-night cafe and reminds us about all of the work that goes on during the night. That work continues during the night. It's all work that happens during the day, but it takes on that different tone and feel and weight through the night. When I am up at night, sometimes I think about everyone who is up with me, keeping the world going through the small hours, the people on the night shift. There is something special and memorable about bringing the work that we usually do during the day into the night. Not emergency work, but work under different light in a different key. Every Sunday morning, our UU congregations gather in memory and service for justice and love, and unlike our Jewish ancestors and siblings, we gather in the morning. We sing morning songs like Woke Up This Morning, or Morning Has Broken, or Morning Has Come. And we do a lot of morning things. We drink coffee, we greet one another, we send our kids out to participate in things going on outside in the sunlight. But a few times a year, and most memorably during these winter holidays, we come to church in the evening. We sing evening songs like Silent Night and Oh Holy Night. And we do evening things like putting up special lights or candles in our sanctuaries and lowering our voices just a bit, speaking in a hush as if we were waiting for something. We might even wear some evening clothes, maybe some sparkles or special adornments or finishings, things we wouldn't normally wear during the day. And we would definitely stay up past our bedtimes, even if we are very young. At these times, even if we bring our candles and flashlights with us, we're also opening ourselves and our communities up to the gifts of the night. The song leader Leah Morris tells us, I will honor the dark as I do the light. Receive the gifts that come to me by day or by night. I will honor the dark as I do the light. Receive the gifts that come to us by day or by night. Now, when our nights are easy, the gifts of the darkness are easy to receive. Gift of rest for our weary bodies, the gift of stillness for noisy lives. But there comes a time in all of our lives when we must live through hard nights too. Maybe this is the season that you or those you love are traveling now. These are nights of grief for beloveds who are dearly missed. They are nights of fear for what the day will bring. They are nights of despair for all that has been lost and will be hard to find again. The healer Miriam Greenspan calls these feelings, fear and despair and grief, she calls them our dark emotions. And she says it's important to pay attention to our emotions in general. Too many people, she writes, have never learned to do this because we've never been encouraged to do it. We have this notion, she writes, that our emotions are not worthy of our serious attention. Now, I have to say, I am sure I am not the first Unitarian Universalist preacher to encourage you to notice your emotions, to both think and feel, to use your head and your heart. But if we are repeating ourselves, it is probably because we have not yet learned the lesson. At Harvard Divinity School, where I studied, we were taught that our Unitarian Universalist ministry was a learned one, a deep intellectual tradition so rightly proud of its contributions to the ways of knowing we know as science, as logic, as an academic rationality. But I think now our people, our Unitarian Universalist ministers, and our people all over the country and the world, I think we're in the midst of a great shift, a great journey toward healing justice, towards what we are now calling in our seminaries a learning ministry. I think every day we're more aware of what the poet called the danger of a single story. Every night we are more open to the many other ways there are of knowing and being, the language of emotions and intuition, the wisdom held in our bodies, not in opposition to our science and our intellect and our rigor and our discipline, but in companionship, in accumulation, in a layering of all the ways there are to be people together, walking and working and standing and answering the call of love together. And I should say our people are not the first to struggle here with this shift from learned to learning, a shift that will continue for a long time. Greenspan continues, naturally we have less difficulty with our so-called positive emotions. People don't mind feeling joy and happiness, but the dark emotions are much harder. Our fear and grief and despair are uncomfortable. They're seen as signs of personal failure. In our culture, we call them negative. We think of them as bad. I prefer, she writes, to call these emotions dark because I like the image of a rich, fertile, dark soil from which something unexpected can bloom. Also, we tend to keep these dark emotions in the dark and tend not to speak about them. We privatize them and we don't see the ways in which they are connected to the world. But the dark emotions, she writes, are inevitable. They are part of the universal human experience, and they are certainly worthy of our attention. They bring us important information about ourselves and the world, and they can be vehicles of profound transformation. Fear and grief and despair are dark emotions. What if we thought of them as dark like the womb, dark like the earth that holds us, dark with the richness of what the poet calls our buried strengths? In the daylight, the hero's journey takes us away, far away, to a country of adventure and new promise. But in the darkness, the hero's journey takes us inward, far inward, into the country of wisdom and dreams. If we are going to travel in the night country, we will need to make more room in ourselves for our emotions, for all the feelings that emerge in quiet and stillness, in rest and rootedness, in solitude. Now, I said earlier that I've never worked a night shift, except for my work as a chaplain, and this is true. But the other exception is, I think, every single night I've ever been a parent, and on the many nights that I've been a friend and a sister and a daughter, also working on the night shift. There have been conversations and connections that I have made slowly at night, when the world around me slows and darkens. when conversations that are hard to have in the sunlight can take voice. They are not always happy conversations or easy conversations, but they are real and important. I think I would call some of these paths of thought and feeling I have traveled at night prayer even, an ongoing conversation between my soul and the great listener who goes by many names. These are part of my night work, you could say. A few years ago, a dear friend of mine died suddenly and unexpectedly. Her name is Anne, and December 19th is her birthday. So this is a time of year when the many gifts of her friendship and love and memory are close for me. Anne did not die of complications from COVID, although this is a loss that was shaped by the pandemic in every way, including that I was not able to travel to attend her funeral mass in New York City. I hadn't seen Anne in about a year when I heard the news that she had died, although I'd actually left her a phone message earlier that morning. But since then, I've dreamed about my friend many times. And my dreams are not sad or painful. They are so comforting. The hard part is when I wake up again and remember that I can't see her here. And my sadness and my grief for this loss becomes present again. I think during the night I'm doing my grief work for my friend, and it is difficult for me to give my attention to this human work during the day, as my family and I are moving through our lives. My kids are 8 and 11 and 14, and it is busy in our lives, a good busy. And we're moving through rich and full days. We are tending to one another, and we are caring for those around us also. Our neighbors, our friendships, our classes, our teachers. We are doing our day work. We are trying to read the news and understand what is shifting and changing every day about the wars in all the places, but especially in Gaza, about the people who are deciding what harm will come to what people today, the people who will one day decide what a just peace will bring to this land in need of so much healing. We are reading about the lawsuits that are holding or trying to hold the powerful accountable for their harm. We are keeping up with our unhoused neighbors and the legacy of urban abandonment that we have inherited in this generation. Sometimes we keep our day work and our night work separate, but sometimes they get mixed up anyway. And the work of grief is like that. The activist theologian Joanna Macy says that our grief is a measure of our love. She says our grief is a measure of our love. And it makes me wonder if our despair can also be considered a measure of our hope. We despair because we hope so deeply for the world that is still possible. Some of you may be familiar with the activist journalist Rebecca Solnit, who posts very actively on her Facebook page. I hope you saw, as I did this week, that she posted a beautiful quote from our people's historian Howard Zinn, who wrote, "To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion and sacrifice and courage and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history," he writes, "will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite successions of presents. And to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory." In this quote, Zinn is offering us not only a voice of a historian, but also a voice of ministry. He is reminding us not only of what has been destroyed, but who it is who will reconstitute the world again when the night is over and the morning comes. It is people like us, It is people like us all over the world who are holding grief and loss and doing our night work, and who are dreaming the same dreams we have for the new day of courage and kindness and compassion that we can make. This solstice season, I hope you know what an honor it is to travel the night country with companions who are living the way humans should live, with people like you who seek not to escape the dark emotions, but to hold them and move through them, to allow them to move through us and bring us into the widest embrace of our communities. It is now that we can swim in the depths, not the shallows of our lives. In this night country, we look down and in, not out and not away. There is something so special about this time of year when we bring the work that is done during the night with us into the day. There is something so important about honoring our dark emotions with our deep attention and our care and our acceptance of their presence within us. There is something extraordinary about the healing journey we can take into the night country in this season of long darkness, in defiance of all that is bad around us, even here, even now. The poet tells us this darkness is not the scary one. It is the one before the sun comes up, the one you can still breathe in. May we be the ones to make it so.